I'm Megan Lally, the Chair of the Environmental Quality Council. This meeting is being held in room 1699 of the Hirschler Building, 122 West 25th Street, Cheyenne, Wyoming. Present today from the council are Tim Flitner, Dr. Dave Bagley, Nick Agopian, Deb Bomber, John Cora, and myself. Staff present today are Jim Ruby, Joe Girardin, and Ryan Shalehouse. At this time, I will open the public hearing in docket 17-1601, a petition for order in lieu of consent by Black Hills Bentonnite. The parties are already present. Would you introduce yourselves and spell your names for the record, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Dave Ditto, D-I-T-T-O. And also with me here today is Alan Rabinoff, R-A-B-I-N-O-F-F, Tom Thorson, President of Black Hills Corporation, Larry Madsen, Vice President of Black Hills, and Doug Gibson, who is also employed by Black Hills.
Good morning, Madam Chairman. My name is Scott Klosterman, spelled K-L-O-S-T-E-R-M-A-N. I'm with the law firm of Williams, Porter, Dane & Hill in Casper, Wyoming. I'm representing the respondents, the TTT Ranch Company, and also James H. Crossingham Jr., C-R-O-S-S-I-N-G-H-A-M. And also with me here today is Mr. Crossingham. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess I'm going to start out by saying this hearing is for an order in lieu of consent. Legally, as a council, we're obligated to analyze the four elements in 35-11-406-B, X, I, I. Please try to limit your arguments to that. We aren't allowed to analyze any other information to make our decision. At this time, is there stipulation to the receipt of any exhibits?
We have not talked in detail about stipulations. I think I can stipulate to all except the application itself. And I did move to, I did object to that. I filed an objection to that, as well as any evidence that the DEQ will review with the application. And then I think there were just the three last exhibits, other road agreements with other landowners. So okay. I don't know the numbers right off the bat.
Yeah, if you'll tell me the ones you object to.
Let's see. Well, I'm missing the last page of my respondent's disclosure statement. I'm good up through I.
I. Ours are by number.
Pardon?
Our exhibits are by number. So.
Oh, what's?
You said I.
Oh, yeah.
So you'd stipulate to.
1, 2, 3, 9, the first 9. Yeah, and that's not, if you have this, slides that, and I'll see what I can stipulate too.
Yeah.
10, 11.
They stipulate.
Yeah, all except for 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I can stipulate to the first 14, I believe. Okay. And that just leaves 4 or 5 that I, oh, thank you.
15. Yeah. Okay, Mr. Klasserman?
So would you prefer that I address each objection to the exhibits, or are you asking at this time which exhibits of the petitioners that we would stipulate to?
I'm asking for which exhibits you would stipulate to.
Okay. We would stipulate to petitioners exhibits 10, 11, 12, 13, 16, 21, 22, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 34, 35, and 42.
Okay. I will go ahead and admit all of those that are stipulated to, and we will address the others as they are introduced, if they are introduced. This council has a history in general of admitting exhibits and giving them the weight they deserve, so keep that in mind. And then on the witnesses, we will address them as they're called and address the objections at that time. Mr. Ditto, would you like to give your opening statement? And please, both of you, limit your opening statements to 10 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, members of the council, I've introduced myself. My name is Dave Ditto, representing Black Hills Bentonnite. We're here for an order in lieu of landowner consent. We believe that we've met all of those requirements. What we're going to show today, and I'll point to some of those exhibits. The first requirement, that the mining plan and reclamation plan be submitted to the surface owner. Doug Gibson will testify that on June 15 of 2017, approximately 8 months ago, he did provide the mining and reclamation plan to Mr. Crossingham, sent it to him by certified mail, and that it was received according to the certified receipt. They also directed the law firm to send him another letter in August 21. Again, notice was provided for him. And finally, when we filed the petition in this matter, a complete copy of the mining and reclamation plan was again sent to Mr. Crossingham. He did not respond. Mr. Doug Gibson will testify that, and he will introduce Exhibit 25, the mining and reclamation plan that was provided to Mr. Crossingham. The second requirement is that the mining and reclamation plan is sufficiently detailed to show the full proposed surface use, including routes of egress and ingress. The mining and reclamation plan included, it's approximately 45 pages in length, going into great detail about the specific locations where the mining pits will be located, where the topsoil will be placed, even up to the detail regarding equipment parking area. And Mr. Crossingham was provided a nice large map that illustrated and showed each of those things, as well as the access road to and through what we call the HERCO amendment. And that's what this application is for the HERCO amendment. It amends an existing mining claim, and although the amendment area itself includes roughly 347 acres. The bentonite outcrops are in various places, and so the actual area that will be mined will be under 30 acres. That detail was provided to Mr. Crossingham in that mining and reclamation plan. The third element is that the use does not substantially prohibit the operations of the surface owner. The Triple T Ranch, I don't know exactly how much land they have, but we're talking somewhere in the neighborhood of 60,000 acres. And it is a cattle ranch. And I understand that they also do some outfitting, some hunting on the property. And so those are the operations that we're talking about, whether or not there's interference, substantial interference is the way the statute is worded. Mr. Crossingham has never, ever complained. Black Hills has been mining out there since the early 1970s, literally for many, many years. And they've never received a complaint about interference with the cattle or the hunting. The Herco Amendment, the actual mining, will be less than 30 acres. Excuse me. So yes, there is a slight impact on the ranch, but it certainly will not substantially interfere with the cattle operation or with the outfitting. There is some wildlife out there, and Mr. Bruce Lawson will testify to that. They've done studies. They spend a lot of time out there. They know what kind of wildlife there is. They have an idea where the cattle are at. In fact, Black Hills has, in some ways, improved areas of the ranch by constructing ditch crossings, helping Mr. Crossingham with his silt reservoirs. They've lent the ranch the Caterpillar to fight forest fires. They've offered other types of things like that. During the hunting season, the Triple T locks the gate, but they've always given Black Hills a key to make sure that they can get in. They've never objected to access. They've never complained about access to any of the mining areas. And of course, once the bentonite is mined, the land will be reclaimed, and that the estimated date for that is 2022. So we're talking 4 years from now that it should be fully reclaimed, and it will be returned again to the Triple T Ranch. So we believe that there's little or no interference, and certainly it's not going to be a substantial interference with that surface operation. And then finally, the last element of the statute is that the proposed plan reclaims the surface to its approved future use in segments if circumstances permit, as soon as feasibly possible. And Mr. Lawson will testify about that procedure. Mining bentonite is, they move from one pit to the next, and as they scrape the topsoil off and pile it, then they will immediately begin reclaiming the area where they just mined. So they move forward from pit to pit.
I can learn to understand you much better.
I don't know why.
Was it talking to me? So as they mine bentonite, they move ahead from pit to pit, and they begin reclaiming right behind them, and that's just the way they do it. Yeah, it's tough to reclaim that ground out there because it is dry. And in fact, many of the places where they mine, there is no grass, there is no, these are bentonite outcroppings where literally the bentonite is at the surface where, it just doesn't support much plant life. But nevertheless, they do go back and reclaim that area. And then, of course, the bond is released by the DEQ and the land is returned for use by the ranch. And that addresses the 4 elements in the statute. That's what we'll show today with our witnesses. Thank you.
Mr. Klosterman?
Good morning, Madam President. Would you prefer that I stand or should I sit?
Whatever's more comfortable for you.
Okay, do you mind if I sit?
No, go for it.
I feel a little uncomfortable standing with the microphone so low. And good morning, members of the EQC panel. As I indicated, my name is Scott Klosterman, and I am representing the respondents. As Mr. Ditto indicated, this hearing here today involves an issue relating to a order seeking consent in lieu of the surface owner's consent. There is no dispute in this matter that the TTT Ranch Company owns all of the surface, which is part of the HERCO amendment area. That HERCO amendment area is comprised of approximately 347 acres. It's found in sections 2 and 11 in the Township 41 North, Range 81 West, which is located in Johnson County. What is important, though, before I believe that this council can even consider whether or not the 4 elements set forth in the applicable statute for giving consent in lieu of the surface owner's consent is for this EQC panel to determine whether or not the mine application itself is in fact deficient. The mining plan and the reclamation plan are all part of the application that is submitted by Black Hills Bentonnite to the Department of Environmental Quality. What is important for this council to know is that within the HERCO amendment area, there was an assignment from not Mr. Crossingham, but rather his grandson, James H. Crossingham IV. He gave an assignment to Black Hills Bentonnite for 2 mining claims. One is called the TTT number 10 mining claim. That mining claim is part of the HERCO amendment. But significantly, that assignment terminates as of May 1st of 2020. The application that was submitted by Black Hills Bentonnite, which has been marked as the respondent's exhibit number, or it's letter S, but I believe that would be, is that number 19? It's important that when you look at that application, Black Hills Bentonnite had to give a sworn statement verifying that they have the legal right to mine all of the area which is included within the HERCO amendment area. And that mine application is for the period starting November 2017 and terminates in 2022. So we know that for the TTT mining claim area, which is part of the HERCO amendment, that Black Hills Bentonnite, as a matter of law, does not have the right to mine beyond May 1st of 2020. On its face, this application is void ab initio. It has no possible legal effect. And so for this panel to even consider whether or not it could give consent in lieu of, you first have to determine whether or not the application is in fact valid. It is not. Furthermore, there's other evidence to present that other mining claims within the HERCO amendment area. There is what's called the Bobcat number 10, which is a mining claim by Mr. Bruce Lawson and other individuals of his family that was then assigned, or there was a lease agreement between Mr. Lawson and Black Hills Bentonnite. With respect to the lands that are covered by the Bobcat number 10 mine, there is also a conflicting and opposing mining claim, which is identified as the TTT 13-27. Within their mine application and within their mining plan and their reclamation plan, the statutes require that the petitioner identify all mining claims associated with lands that are in the amendment area. They never identified the TTT 13-27 mining claim as being part of this amendment area. Honestly, there is a dispute between the Bobcat 10 and the TTT 1327, but that has never been resolved. And for Black Hills Bentonnite to now claim that they have the legal right, there's a question about that, which would further negate or void this application. Furthermore, in the same Bobcat number 10 area, there is also a conflicting what's called NOIDL, which is Notice of Intent to Locate. There was a Notice of Intent to Locate within the same area covered by the Bobcat number 10 by Pamela Watson. All of those two conflicting mining claims are all identified in the report from the petitioner's own expert, Mr. Rabinov. So before you can even consider these statutory elements as to whether or not you can give consent in lieu of, there has to be a determination of whether or not this application is valid. It's important to note that the petitioner did not even include this application with the exhibits that are presented to you. Furthermore, we have as an exhibit the mining claim and the reclamation plan that Black Hills Bentonnite submitted as an exhibit, but none of the maps or any of those other details are included within the exhibit that has been presented to you. So we have all kinds of missing information which is relevant to the determination. If in fact this council decides that it can hear and decide the issues relating to whether or not there should be consent in lieu of the surface owner's consent, we will present evidence that elements B, C, and D of Wyoming Statute 35-11-406, B, subpart 12, have not been met. Specifically, subpart B requires that the mining plan and reclamation plan is detailed so as to illustrate the full proposed surface use, including the routes of ingress and egress. And what we'll present to you is in the reclamation plan and the mining plan, there's no discussion of how it is that Black Hills Bentonnite is going to access the Herco Amendment area. The only road that they have access to is within the amendment area. They don't show you that in order to get to that amendment area, they have to travel over 5 or 6 miles of surface lands owned by the TTT Ranch. All of those areas where you have truck traffic, dust going throughout all parts of the TTT Ranch are in fact affected by that. But they never included that in their reclamation plan. They just want to talk about the little Herco Amendment area as being what could potentially be affected. But that's certainly not the case. In addition, with regards to element C, whether or not the use does not substantially prohibit the operations of the surface owner, will present evidence that Black Hills Bentonnite never even contacted the surface owner to discuss with them what in fact are your surface operations within the Herco Amendment area or within the area where we're going to ingress or egress to get to this property. You're going to hear from our ranch manager about how this truck traffic affects not only the cattle operations, but it also affects ephemeral drainages that are in this area. We'll talk about how this affects not only when Black Hills Bentonnite is coming in, but there's also issues with regards to the public accessing or using these same routes to come and essentially go across the TTT Ranch. Subpart D is whether or not the proposed plan reclaims the surface of its approved future use in segments if circumstances permit as soon as feasibly possible. We'll present, 1 minute, we will present evidence for this council to talk about how when Black Hills Bentonnite comes in and mines, They do sequential mine cuts where they cut out one portion. Well, let me back up. Before they even cut, they have to strip off the topsoil. They stockpile that. Then they come down and they strip off the overburden, which is below the topsoil, and then they pile that. And then they have sequential pit cuts where they're cutting the bentonite, okay? But they don't mine the whole area. What they do is they make one pit cut, and then they go back and put the overburden on top of that, but then they never reclaim it until they've finished the entire pit, and then they finally come back and put the topsoil. To suggest that they reclaim it as they make these sequential pit cuts is entirely untrue. They've been out there mining in this area for more than 30 years. They leave their stockpiles. They come in and out whenever they feel it's economically feasible to take the bentonite that they've stockpiled and left it there for years and years and years. It's not reclaimed timely. They've left it out there. And that was the entire purpose of having this assignment, which terminated at a specific date. Our landowner wanted Black Hills Bentonite to have the opportunity to come in and do their mining, but they wanted it to be with an end date so that they would finish, get out, and be done so that they could get back to raising their cattle and using the surface in ways that they always have. And for these reasons, we will ask that the council respectfully deny the request, but we believe initially this council should make a determination as to whether or not this application is deficient and whether or not it's void on its face. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ditto, would you like to call your first witness?
Yes, thank you. I'll call Doug Gibson.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Will you state your full name for the record, Mr. Gibson?
My name is Douglas Gibson.
And how are you employed?
I'm an environmental technician for Black Hills Bentonnite.
What are your responsibilities as a technician?
Mostly I put together permit applications, mine plan revisions, go out in the field at times and take topsoil samples, put up electric fence, various things.
How long have you been with Black Hills?
Just over 8 years.
Were you involved in preparing the HERCO amendment mine and reclamation plans?
Yes.
I'd like to hand to you Exhibit 25 and ask if you would identify that.
Okay, so Exhibit 25 contains the cover letter that I sent to Mr. Crossingham. It also contains everything from the mine plan section of the permit application and the reclamation section of the permit application.
And I believe there's one page that is not included in the middle of that. This was filed as Exhibit 42. Can you tell me, was this part of the?
It was. Exhibit 42 is the mine plan map that was also included in the mine plan section.
And was that sent to Mr. Crossingham with the?
It was.
I would move to admit Exhibit 25 and Exhibit 42.
Mr. Klosterman, you have an objection to number 25?
I do, to the extent that this is not a complete set of the mine and reclamation plan, which includes all of the maps that go along with it. It's incomplete.
I will, we'll take that into consideration. I'll go ahead and admit it.
If you would describe for me, first of all, the mining plan, exactly what's included in the mining plan in Exhibit 25, what it describes.
So the mine plan has our operator contact information. It describes our type of mining activities, that we conduct open pit surface mining, and we do it in a sequence. It gives a approximate time frame for all mining activities, including, reclamation. The type of machinery that we'll be using, the mineral that we'll be mining, has a section on protection of other resources, whether there's any other types
Sorry, excuse me. No, we just got that up against the table. It's picking up your.
if there's any oil wells in the area, any other type of mining or whatnot. It talks about, there's basically, things that we have to address based on the guidelines. And so we try and address everything through the mine plan or the reclamation plan. Just goes through how we'll handle topsoil, how we'll salvage it, if we need to put in culverts, how, we determine, what size culverts we'll put in, how we'll affect hydrology, drainages or whatnot, or what we'll do to avoid affecting drainages, how, if we'll handle any fuel spills, how we'll handle our trash, how we'll store the bentonite, dry it, whether or not we'll, need to build fences to protect the reclamation, our mining schedule and sequence, it lists all the pits that are proposed, all the overburn stockpiles that are proposed, the topsoil stockpiles, how we'll handle the overburden, and other things like that. I also have in there a table on all the pits, stockpiles, access road segments, what we'll potentially get for topsoil volumes, overburn volumes, has figures for how we'll construct the roads, how we'll put in the culverts, a kind of a figure showing a general, pit mining procedure, and then, the mine plan map. And then we go into the reclamation plan, which has, how we'll control erosion, reestablish any ephemeral drainage we may affect, how we'll handle slope conditions, how we'll prepare the area, prior to laying topsoil, procedures for determining, when we'll submit our final reclamation for bond release, how things will be compared to how the area was previously to mining, so that the reclamation is either as good or better than before we got there, the type of seed we'll use, how how we'll pick areas to compare our final reclamation to what the area was like before. A rough estimate of what we expect the cost will be to do the complete mining. And that pretty much wraps up. There's a couple of photographs for how reclamation may look at the end in terms of if we mine up against a butte. And that's pretty much what's in there.
You mentioned the mine plan map,
Yes.
and what are you referring to when you say that?
The mine plan map would be that map right there.
So exhibit 42.
Yes.
And can you just describe briefly what the colors show on the map?
Okay, so
Would you like to come stand up here?
okay.
We'll set this right out up here. That's fine, Madam Chair, to stand up here. Can he approach
Yeah,
and
that's
point
fine.
out
Yeah, that's fine.
Would you approach and just discuss what the colors show on? If you would just describe the area of the Herco amendment,
If you could go to
Maybe-
the other side.
just
Turn it so Mr. Klosterman can see it also.
Put it over here so that camera can pick it up. So if we got, actually,
Oh, I didn't-
have a witness
This
stay
side?
where he was at. By a mic.
Where's
the
camera?
The camera's right.
You put it right over here.
would you rather I put it up on this board over here?
You'll take that.
Yeah, I did too.
If you want to just,
Very good.
and you
This-
don't need to worry about the mic, it'll pick you up. It's really sensitive.
This one.
This hearing's being recorded and broadcast, so that's why we have to be aware of the camera, which I forgot.
We want
about
the
also.
camera to see it, but we don't need to see it, I guess. So you just keep moving away. Hell do we know?
Hopefully I won't get in the way of the camera here.
No, you don't have to worry about that. Just
Okay. Mr. Gibson, will you show the council where the Herco amendment is?
Okay. So this blue line, boundary line right here, represents the entire boundary of the Herco amendment. There is within this blue boundary line what we call incidental boundary revision number 7. And it's a little hard to see, but it's this purple line, which basically surrounds this access road. And this access road and the purple boundary is already part of our current permit area. The blue line represents the Herco amendment.
Okay. And about how many acres is within that Herco amendment?
So within the Herco amendment, when you exclude the boundary that we already have within the permit, it is approximately 347 acres.
And approximately how many acres will be mined within there?
The total affected area within this permit, including the topsoil piles, all the overburn stockpiles, the pits, any little access road segments to the areas, all of that is 28.7 acres.
And is there a road, an access road there?
Yes, so this boundary down in here and this boundary here is already part of our permit. And this road comes through our permit and connects with this part of our permit and goes all the way through the Herco amendment and then down to this part of our permit where we're currently mining down in here.
And when you say it's part of was the road itself part of your earlier permits?
This road here, yes.
And when was that road approved?
This road segment here was approved back around 1999. This stuff in here was approved. Well, Amendment 1 was approved prior to that, and then these lands were updated. This one was updated after that time.
Okay, thank you. Before, you said that Exhibit 25, the mine and reclamation plan, I think you can sit down if you'd like. You sent this letter to Mr. Crossingham on June 15, 2017.
Correct.
Were there discussions with Mr. Crossingham before that to request Form 8, the landowner permission?
Yes.
Can you tell me what happened before? In other words, yeah.
So, hold on, I'm going to object to the extent that any discussions about trying to reach an agreement on surface consent, if this council is only going to consider the 4 elements that are part of it, it's irrelevant about what the parties may have discussed before we're here today. I mean, that has no relevance to whether or not these statutory elements are met. So if we're going to preclude any discussion about the application or anything else, I see that there's no relevance to how the parties communicated or negotiated prior to this time.
Can I respond to that?
Go ahead.
Mr. Klosterman said in his opening statement that we want him out of there by April 2000 or May 1, 2020. And yet there were many discussions about approval before that. And so it goes directly to that demand that they be out of there by May of 2020 on the contract.
I'm going to go ahead and allow it.
And we're not going to go very far, but Mr. Gibson, did you prepare an earlier amendment than this Herco amendment?
I did.
And what was that one called?
That one was called the Snyder Ranch Amendment.
Okay. And was this area, what was included in the Snyder Ranch Amendment?
Okay, so the original Snyder Ranch Amendment contained what you now see as the Herco Amendment, and then it also contained an area down here. And so at that time, we also tried to establish an agreement with Mr. Crossingham. Because of the time frame of how things were going, we ended up splitting things apart. So the Snyder Ranch just became this area down here, and the Herco Amendment became what you see now up here.
And did the Snyder Ranch include, you say, the yellow framed stuff there?
No, this stuff is already within our permit and approved. The Snyder Ranch contained basically the rest of the northwest quarter of Section 13 and a little portion down here in the southwest quarter.
And what happened with the Snyder Ranch Amendment?
We finally received surface owner consent from Mr. Crossingham for this area down here, and then we submitted that application to the Department of Environmental Quality, and we received approval from the Department of Environmental Quality for this Snyder Ranch Amendment January 9th of this year.
Thank you. When Mr. Crossingham signed Form 8 for the Snyder Ranch Amendment, is that when the road was, no, you said the road was approved in 1999.
Correct.
Did he say anything about access? Any complaints about access?
I object on the relevance in regards to now the Snyder Ranch Amendment area as being relevant for purposes of determining the order in lieu of consent for the Herco Amendment area.
I was wondering the same thing. seems to be getting out of the Herco amendment and into something else.
Okay. We'll move on.
Thank you.
When is the first time that you have heard an objection to access by Mr. Crossingham?
As far as I'm aware, my knowledge is just as of a few days ago.
Did you ever hear anything back after you sent this June 15 letter, approximately 8 months ago? Did you ever hear back from Mr. Crossingham?
No, myself, no. As far as direct communication with me, no.
Okay. Do you, okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Gibson.
Hello.
You testified earlier that part of your work as an environmental technician for Black Hills Bentonnite is to fill out permit applications. Is that true?
Yes, I put them together, correct.
Okay. Have you seen the permit application for the Herco amendment?
Oh, yes.
Okay. And so you're familiar with the TTT exhibit number 19?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And who signed this permit application?
That would be Todd Drews, our CFO.
Okay. And this is a sworn statement, correct?
Correct.
I am going to object to this exhibit. Again, it goes to the DEQ application and their process as opposed to 3511-406.
I'm going to go ahead and admit it, and we'll give it the weight it deserves as we go along.
Mr. Gibson, what was the date of this application?
Without looking at the cover letter that I sent to the DEQ, I would have to go with the date that you have on here as November 1st, 2017. Usually the date that me personally call like the date of the application is usually like what I put on the cover letter when I sent to the DEQ. I don't know what that is off the top of my head. But November 1st, 2017 is probably pretty close.
So you're looking at page 3 of exhibit number 19, correct? That gives the date.
Oh, I was looking at the bottom of all of them, but yes.
Okay. And if you look to page 1 of this exhibit number 19, this title of this document is State of Wyoming Department of Environmental Quality, Land Quality Division, Application for Permit to Mine or Amendment to a Permit to Mine or Coal Permit Renewal. Is that true?
That's true.
Okay. And if you turn to page 2 of this exhibit and you look at paragraph 7, this is a application for permit to mine number 248C-Herco amendment, true?
Correct.
So that's what we're talking about when you describe this Herco amendment area as being approximately 347 acres, right?
That is correct.
Okay. And when you look also on page 2, do you see under paragraph number 5, you've stated, or Black Hills Bentonnite has stated, that the estimated dates of commencement and termination are starting November of 2017 and terminate on 2022, correct?
Correct.
Who determined those dates?
Me. And that, would you like me to explain that? Or-
Well, let me ask you this question. In preparation of this application, did you actually fill this out or did Mr. Drews?
I fill it out.
Okay, and then you have him sign it.
Correct.
Okay. And did you, as part of your review or in preparing this application, determine who had the legal right to mine within the Herco Amendment area?
Could you repeat that question?
Yes, in preparing this application, did you review any documentation to determine who had the legal right to mine within the area that is within the Herco Amendment area?
Yes.
Okay, what documents did you review? So
I reviewed a quitclaim deed for the Herco Herringer Minerals, the 3T 10 and 11 lease, and then the lease agreement between Black Hills Bentonnite regarding the Bobcat 10 claim.
Did you review the assignment from J.H. Crossingham IV to Black Hills Bentonnite?
Is that the one where you're referencing for the 3T10 and 3T11 claim?
Yes, sir.
Correct, yes.
Do you have in front of you the plaintiff's exhibits, or the petitioner's exhibits, the other ones? Would you please grab petitioner's exhibit 27? And I believe, Madam Councilwoman, this has already been admitted.
It has.
Okay. We did review the assignment, which is marked as petitioner's exhibit 27.
Pages 1 and 2, yes. The other attached stuff, I've never been. Yes, sir.
All right. Let's look at page 1, paragraph 3. Do you see that?
Yep.
Does this assignment say that, quote, this assignment shall be in force and effect from April 30th, 2013 to April 30th, 2020. On May 1st, 2020, this assignment shall expire and all rights and interests granted to BHB hereunder shall terminate and be of no further force and effect, close quote. Did I read that correctly?
You did.
Okay. So pursuant to this assignment, and specifically as it relates to the TTT number 10 claim, which you admit and agree is part of the Herco Amendment area, true?
Could you say that one more time, please?
Would you agree that the TTT number 10 mining claim, which is part of this assignment,
yes,
from J.H. Crossingham IV to Black Hills Bentonnite Limited Partnership, that mining claim is part of the Herco Amendment area?
Yes, it is.
And that mining claim, number TTT number 10, terminates as of May 1st, 2020.
Yes, it does.
Okay. And so let's go back to the application where Mr. Drews, in his sworn statement, he stated under oath that Black Hills Bentonnite had the legal right to mine from all of the lands within the Herco Amendment area
I'm going to object.
for the period of,
I'm going to object.
Just a minute.
He's misquoting the statute and misquoting the testimony. It doesn't say mining from all the lands. It says mining from the lands.
you understood, did you not, Mr. Gibson, that this?
Just a minute.
Okay.
I have to address the objection.
It's okay for me to.
Yeah, go ahead.
There are some of us that are having difficulty getting any of these exhibits up on our computers, so
Yeah.
we're having a hard time following. I
Okay,
see you have it maybe, but Deb and I don't.
okay,
So
let me
something's wrong with the technology.
address that and then we'll try and figure this
Yes,
out
just take
before
a
we move
pause.
on.
You got it.
We'll let this go, but we'll see how far it goes.
That's right. Here.
Sorry,
Here,
because
is this one of the-
we'll let this go. We'll let this go on for right now, this line of questioning. But hold on just a second until we figure out the exhibits.
See, Deb has got the same problem. And I got it. Seems to be.
They're popping up for me on my computer.
Yeah,
Are you using your own machine?
Yeah.
Yeah. See,
but no,
some people that are using their own, but you have.
I do have a thumb drive with all our exhibits on it. I don't know if that make any difference or not.
well, let's see if we can. They seem to be coming up as soon as we get everybody's. Great. 20. Yeah, 27.
Scroll down. There.
Sorry, this technology is supposed to make things easier.
Hey, Joe, ever show me how to get rid of this one thing? Oh, it's over in the other column. Oh, this thing.
Why don't we take 5 minutes, come back at 10 o'clock, and everybody can stretch their
I
legs.
didn't want that.
I'm sorry, we're looking at this. No, it's that right there. You said that, okay. Now, we're in exhibit what?
Take the break for this
Yeah.
Am I okay to move?
Yeah.
Because, yeah, what is the exhibit?
What was the exhibit number?
27.
27.
I did, yeah.
I do on every one of these.
Can you at least rate
I just let it go.
so we know?
I mean, I can see.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thanks, sir. All right, now, here, Jim, let's back up. Hey, wait a minute, don't, let's just see how. Okay, no, it came up. All right. Deb, did you get it up?
I did.
All right, I got it.
Where are you, Mr.?
But every time I try to do a new exhibit,
Yeah, I have
it says, before I won't open it.
So we just have to be able to go down. So we can cover.
Yeah, I don't know. I want to look at these things.
Yeah.
And so they're letting the network just call park.
Okay, right.
So Dave's home, Nick's home.
Are getting right on, but they're on, well, he might be on our way. I don't know about the-
The paperwork you need.
Is he on
Okay.
a Wi-Fi or is he on a phone? Right, you're getting it. Right, you're getting it.
He said, I think he logged into the Wi-Fi. I gave him the
Okay.
password earlier,
Okay.
so.
Well, and guess we're gonna update sooner than the end of the year.
Yeah, we're on.
Most of that,
But if it's,
at the end of the year, because, you know, that's what the budget is due. So,
No, I think. Okay, very good.
well, I can do that, but it's gonna be,
They know that.
and it'll be just as hard to get through by this.
yeah.
So.
Some people work better on that. Some people work better on that.
Perfect.
Ryan in the mentor, not breaking 12 times.
You gotta remind me, 'cause
Well, I was actually, I said, I'll take a break, and then I realized I never was. So,
I'm working it out.
hey, man of a certain age, I'm sorry.
And how many cups of coffee, right?
Yeah.
Mom used to drive me. 3 hours to get anywhere, so.
Yeah.
Don't count on me, call me.
I know where every corner, every tree, everything is, and everywhere I drive, my wife thinks it's really funny. She's like, you never have to worry about the kids having to stop because dad always has to stop.
My husband's way worse than I am too. He'll stop way more often.
Yeah, I could go. I mean, I could do hearings.
The EPA is a federal.
I can't do this.
That training you were doing yesterday, it's like this going and going. Yeah, these people. I just slip out, then I came back, I lost my connection or something. I don't know. So every time I stepped out of the room. Connection came back the next day. Yeah, works great, it works.
Yeah.
We have a minute to go.
Yeah. We won't
There'll
start
be a
with
line.
that.
It'll be calm by the time he gets there.
Yeah, for once, it's not the women's back, it's, yeah. No, I didn't notice that, actually.
get all fixed?
Because they
Yeah.
have more oversight.
Those might be something.
And so kind of looked to John to he make these
Unless there's something, but even then.
You never see them. Well, we see.
I mean, if it's
Just the
not
wireless.
something that's terrible, you know, unless it's actually completely illegal. And there's no. There's nothing that's
so you can step apart. I mean, don't just jump. I mean, just kind of stand back from the back.
Yeah. I gotta send one text.
I remember when we moved out of the desert in Saudi.
They could go another 6 months.
Yeah, but you hear they said they're not maintaining anything in here anymore. It's the first meeting.
And we're like,
So.
The guy who's talking about his
I walked the wrong way yesterday and I looked at the bathroom and I looked by the elevator. Okay, all right.
for like 3 days.
Yeah.
Before they got after.
Yeah, when they're clearing you out, man, there's nothing left.
My babysitter.
You want to
See if it works. There's your exhibits. Just try and use that, see if it works.
Okay. All right.
Move it where you want to. Just
I'll
give
keep
it
it
a
there
shot.
for a while. Yeah, I'll do it.
It might work better. I can't guarantee it.
Well, listen. Yeah.
Okay, as soon as Nick gets back, I'll start it.
You know, when I get
Right,
at the end of the day.
Hey, Jim.
Yeah, you have to use the arrows. It's not a finger.
Okay, so both parties are there.
Yeah, they're just, it's in a long.
Sure. Whoops.
Yes.
All right, I have at least a fall back here.
No.
I'm gonna use Megan whenever I can.
Good, okay, so.
Because mine
She seems to be working, but mine.
Well, I wonder if there's just a lot of this, the number.
No, sometimes you just have to hit it 2 or 3 times before it opens. On my first nights. Yeah. Oh, pretty good that day, so have somebody here with the kids, but then my son had piano lessons and now it's canceled. Kids. That her babysitter was saying she went to the class, let me pick them up.
Another one that said,
Well, she's not. Use her. I guess we'll go ahead and start without Nick. He doesn't. Yeah. He's on his way.
Yeah. Please put your name.
That's why.
Cut up. Okay.
No, you must be sure. One more minute.
Okay, I'll call this meeting back to order. I'm going to allow this line of questioning to go on for right now.
Mr. Cora, would you like me to back up a little bit and go through these exhibits?
Yes, please.
Okay. Do you have in front of you then TTT exhibit? It's right here. Okay. So this is the application that was sworn by Todd Drews on 1st of 2017, correct?
Correct.
And this is for the Herco Amendment area.
Correct.
Okay. And the time period for which this application is seeking approval to mine is from November 2017 to 2022, correct?
Those are the dates on the application, correct?
Okay. And if you would turn to page 3 of this exhibit, this is where Mr. Drews is providing his sworn statement under oath, correct?
He did sign this, correct?
And I'd like you to look down in this sworn statement where after it says, I, Todd Drews, and if you would skip down, I believe it's 1, 2, 3, it's the 5th line from the top. Do you see where it says by execution? It's within the middle of that paragraph. Do you see where Black Hills Bentonnite LLC is in bold?
Yes, I do.
Okay, if you just move to the right or left of that, do you see where it says by execution?
I do.
Okay, I'm going to read this and tell me if I read this correctly. By execution of this statement, I certify that Black Hills Bentonnite LLC, applicant, or entities controlled by or under common control with the applicant has the right and power by the legal estate owned to mine from the land for which this permit amendment is desired. Did I read that correctly?
You did.
And the land for which this permit or amendment is being sought is for all lands within the Herco Amendment area, true?
This was for the entire Herco Amendment, correct?
Which included the TTT number 10 mining claim.
Yes, it did include the 3T10 claim.
And you know, by looking at the assignment, which was marked as Petitioner's Exhibit 27, that the assignment for the TTT number 10 mining claim terminated as of May 1st, 2020.
Yes, that is when the 3T10 claim expires, is yes.
And Black Hills Bentonnite did not and does not have the legal right to mine on the TTT number 10 mining claim after May 1st of 2020, true?
That is correct.
Now, you talked about, and you used the words when filling out and submitting a mine plan and a reclamation plan that you are following various guidelines. Is that true?
That is correct.
Those are not guidelines, they're requirements, right?
Actually, I would have to say they are guidelines because they state in there, this is what we recommend.
Well, when you go back to the actual application that you submit for a mine permit, it specifically identifies what information must be included within your mine plan and your reclamation plan. True?
I guess I don't understand that question.
Okay. Well, when you look at the application itself, okay, it has specific requirements as far as what type of appendices and information that you must include with your mine application, correct?
You're referring to item 3 and the stuff below that?
Correct.
Correct.
All right. And so when you submit a mine plan and a reclamation plan, it includes not only the information that you were reading from, but also essentially all of this information that's in this 3-ring binder, right?
Well, when you refer to the mine plan and rec plan, no, none of this stuff is in there, in that specific mine plan or rec plan.
Okay. The information that was provided to my client with these various maps, all of that is required as part when you apply for an amendment, true?
Not that I'm aware. All that we're required to send to the surface owner is a copy of the mine plan and the reclamation plan, which would be everything contained in Exhibit 25.
Okay. The information that you submit to the DEQ includes a mine plan and reclamation plan along with all of these maps, true?
Along with all the additional stuff, that is correct. All that goes to the DEQ. Yes.
And those are requirements. They're not guidelines.
At least when you read the guidelines, it says this is what we recommend, or this is what you should. It doesn't say you're required. It says this is what, if you want to get this approved, this is what we recommend that you address and take care of. It doesn't say you're required to put all of this. It says this is what's recommended. This is a guideline of things you should address or put in there.
Okay. In your mine plan, is there a requirement for you to address the ingress and egress from the area for which you are seeking your amendment?
I would say, I don't know how to answer that question.
Well, don't you have to tell both the DEQ and the landowner how it is that you're going to get to this property that you want to mine?
Yes, and in the mine plan, there's a little section that talks about how, we're accessing from the South Fork Road through already previously established road segments.
Okay, so if you look at your mine plan, okay, did you identify by legal description which route you were going to take in order to get to the Herco Amendment area?
I'm going to object to the characterization of legal description. The way it's characterized, that isn't what the statute requires.
Could you ask your question again so I can?
In your mine plan, did you include a description of you have a legal description from which you were going to provide or get ingress and egress to the Herco Amendment area?
Go ahead and answer the question and include what the legal requirement is. Yes.
It might be clearer if you just put up on the map and show us where it is. And then the legal description as you read it to us won't mean anything. Just numbers. Okay. We're not familiar with the land and the lay of the land. So, your permission, I'd rather see it where it lies and what you're doing. We beat a bunch of numbers that we can read that don't mean it.
Yeah. That might be more.
Okay. With your permission, could I put up a map, please?
Sure. What exhibit is this?
Well, this is not an exhibit because it wasn't included by the petitioner as part of this, but could I lay some foundation for this?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So Mr. Gibson, are you familiar with this map that is entitled Permit to Mine number 248C Herco Amendment, Appendix A, map number 1, surface ownership and right-of-way locations? Are you familiar with that?
Yes, I am.
Okay, did you help prepare this map?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and on this map, which is for purposes of establishing or showing the rights-of-way location, is there anything to the north of this Herco Amendment area that indicates the access route?
And what is this map of exactly? Is it of the entire Herco Amendment?
It is. So what we have in the blue here, as he described earlier, is the Herco Amendment area.
Okay.
And my question to you, Mr. Gibson, is on this map, which is identified as being surface ownership and right-of-way locations, is there any description on here that Black Hills Bentonnite identified how they were going to obtain ingress and egress to this Herco Amendment area?
No, the only thing that it shows is specifically what's in the Herco Amendment.
Right. So there is no description whatsoever showing all of the other surface lands of the TTT ranch that would be affected in order to gain ingress and egress to this Herco Amendment area. True?
Could you repeat that one more time, please?
Yes. Nowhere did you provide a map showing the route of ingress and egress in order to get to the Herco Amendment area. True?
This is the extent that we showed on this map, just right here.
Okay. And you would agree with me, wouldn't you, Mr. Gibson, that when trucks are going down the road and creating dust, that dust can affect surface lands outside of the Herco Amendment area?
Mr. Klosterman, are you going to offer this as an exhibit?
I will.
Could you repeat that again, please?
Okay. Mr. Gibson, would you agree that if there are haul trucks that are going to and from this Herco Amendment area, that dust that's created by those haul trucks going up and down the road, that dust could affect surface lands outside of the Herco Amendment area?
I'm not an expert, but I would assume yes, it would.
Okay. I would move and mark this map that's identified as the surface ownership and right-of-way locations as respondent or TTT Exhibit 20.
I have no objection.
Okay. We'll go ahead and admit it.
With respect to the ingress and egress to the Herco Amendment area, did you make any determination as to whether or not Black Hills Bentonnite has the legal right to obtain access from some routes to that area?
So like shown on the previous map, we have permits adjacent to the Herco Amendment right here. We have permit adjacent to the Herco Amendment down here. We have permit through this road right here. So egress and ingress to the Herco Amendment is already through our permit that we have approved and have been mining on for over 30 years. So that road was used to establish that, I would say.
You haven't been mining in the Herco Amendment area for 30 years, have you?
This Herco, no, but you know, outside and north of that, they've been in the area.
And Black Hills Bentonnite doesn't have a road easement or right-of-way to the Herco Amendment area, true? The only road easement that it has is within the Herco Amendment area, true?
I don't know if I would be the best one to answer that question. I don't know all the agreements that Black Hills have. I cannot say that I would be the best one to answer that
But
question.
what this map shows, TTT number 20, is that the only legal access you have in regards to a road easement with the surface owner is within the Herco Amendment area. True? That's all that's depicted on this map.
Yeah, the only thing depicted on that map is anything that fell within the Herco Amendment.
Okay. Now, as part of your mine plan, you testified earlier that there are tables and schedules relating to the completion or the expected completion of the work. Is that true?
I wouldn't say there's a table for expected completion. Mostly the tables, and the tables don't even say expected start, because there was no way to determine when we get approval for the permit. So like when I put together a table for all the mining features and when they would get started, I just put year one, that everything would be started year one whenever Black Hills Bentonnite received approval to mine or received approval, surface owner consent. So there was no way to determine when anything would actually start. So it was just put as year one so that everything would get going as soon as everything was approved.
And you know that is not true. That you're not going to be essentially able to mine and complete all of the mining within 1 year. Is that true?
That's not what the year one represented. The year one represented when everything would, start.
The way that Black Hills Bentonnite mines, they don't do essentially a complete pit at one time where they come in, remove the topsoil, remove the overburden, and remove the bentonite, and then go back and fill it in and reclaim it. That's not the practice of Black Hills Bentonnite. True?
I would not be the best person to answer that question because most of my time is spent in the office. As far as things that occur in the field and how they go, I would not be the best person to answer that question.
You don't know how Black Hills Bentonnite mines up in this area?
In general terms, yes. As far as, deciding what pits get opened first and all that, I don't determine that.
Well, do you know when the pits get reclamated in relationship to when the first mine pit is opened?
I'm not the person that determines that stuff either.
Mr.
I think he's
Klosterman?
demonstrated.
Yeah.
He's the wrong guy.
So you don't know anything about how Black Hills Bentonnite actually conducts its mining operations out on properties that are owned by the 3T Ranch, true?
Mr. Klosterman, we just established that he doesn't know that.
Okay. Mr. Gibson, prior to preparing the mine plan and the reclamation plan for the HERCO amendment, did you ever contact the surface owner?
I'm not in the position to contact Mr. Crossingham outside like what I am asked to send him, or like when I put the HERCO amendment together and put Exhibit 25 together to send to him. That's the only contact, in that nature that I have with Mr. Crossingham. I'm not at the level when I can call and talk with him. I'm not a person of that level.
Okay, so isn't it true then that when you prepared the mine plan and the reclamation plan for the HERCO amendment area, that you had no idea what surface operations were being conducted by the 3T Ranch?
Could you repeat that question, please?
Yes. When you prepared this mine plan and the reclamation plan for the HERCO amendment, it's true that you had no idea what surface operations were being conducted by the 3T Ranch out in the HERCO amendment area. True?
I'm not aware personally of everything that the 3T Ranch does. I am aware that they have cattle, and on my trips through the permit area on their lands, I see their cattle. As far as other activities, specifically that the 3T does, on other permit applications for the 3T Ranch, as far as I'm aware, their main operation is livestock.
And that's based upon your personal observation.
my personal observation and what has been put in previous applications regarding the 3T ranch.
Okay. But in all of those previous applications and with this application, you never contacted the surface owner?
I personally have never had direct contact with Mr. Crossing.
Okay. Did you actually walk or do any sort of surveying of the HERCO amendment area?
I did.
Okay. So did you make any determination, for instance, about what drainages run through the HERCO amendment area?
So this is what I did. Is it okay if we show the other map?
Sure.
Which exhibit is that?
This is 42.
Okay, so in putting together this mine plan, we have the red here indicates proposed pit locations. And within most of these areas, except for this one here, this area appears just a all-out bentonite outcrop. But in these other areas, through the years, we've done drilling. So we have the drill hole data for these areas. And in putting together the mine plan, Tom, basically showed where he wanted to go and have his pits. And then prior to putting all this together, I went out with a GPS unit, and before I drew up the pits or where to put topsoil stockpiles, I outlined everywhere where all the drainages were. And by GPSing the drainages, I was on top of the drainage, like on high ground. I was not down in the bottom of the drainage, I was on high ground. So I laid out all the boundaries that were basically at the top of the drainages. And then from there, I offset by 20 to 30 feet away from the drainages before I laid the boundaries of the pits or where we were going to put overburn stockpiles or topsoil stockpiles.
As part of your work, then, you are trying to identify what drainages, streams, or creeks may be affected by the mining plan, correct?
In order to avoid affecting them, correct.
Okay. And did you prepare a hydrology map?
Within the application, there is a hydrology section.
Okay. And you're familiar with that hydrology map?
Correct.
How many drainages run through the HERCO amendment area?
Well, it would depend on your definition of a drainage. I mean, there's lots of little ephemeral drainages that, snow melt or runoff, it collects and then funnels to more significant drainages.
Okay. Well, there's actually some statutory provisions that talk about the types of drainages that you need to identify as being potentially affected by mining operations, true?
Correct.
Okay. And if you look on this map, and we'll mark this as TTT number 21, is this blue area the HERCO amendment area?
It is.
Okay. And isn't it true that you have three drainages that run through the HERCO amendment area? You have the Hot Water Creek, which is identified with a blue line, true?
So this map that you're...
Is that a true statement?
Say that one more time.
Yes. Does the Hot Water Creek, which is identified with a blue line, is that going through the HERCO amendment area?
Yes.
Okay. Does the Million Creek, which is also identified as a blue line, run through the HERCO amendment area?
So the Million Creek is more like an intermittent blue line. I don't, as opposed to what the hot water one looks like. But it does, through an intermittent blue line, does kind of lay out the Million Creek.
Okay. And isn't it also true that the Thomas Creek also runs through the HERCO amendment area?
That would be correct.
Okay, and tell the council, what does the blue lines represent on this hydrology map?
So on this map, they're not really distinguished because this isn't kind of, what this map we use for is just to show like if there are any surface water rights or wells in the area. That's all that we've used this map to depict is where any of those surface water rights or water wells are, you know, in relation to the permit area. I believe what you're referring to is showing, you know, any significant drainages or whatnot are depicted in another portion of the permit application.
Isn't it true that in your mine plan that Black Hills Bentonnite stated, quote, no perennial or intermittent streams will be disturbed by the mining activities within this amendment area? Isn't that true?
Madam Chair, I don't know where this is all leading to. This is all stuff, again, that the DEQ addresses, and it's all stuff that really that they exercise jurisdiction over. So I think we're getting pretty far afield of, you know, submitting the plans to Mr. Crossingham.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I was thinking the same thing. I mean, we know we've been through these things before, and this step is we're looking at what would be the substantial use that might be prohibited, I assume, is what we're getting to, but not the hydrology plan is separately examined by DEQ as part of, you know, section H of this, where they'll determine if there's deficiencies and things like that. And so, yeah, we may be back again, right? We've been through this before. If they're not happy with the actual application, but right now we're just looking at those steps A, B, C, and D, and this is, I agree, it's far afield.
I guess I would, Madam Chair, I would agree with that. And I'd only offer, you could probably get to your point, Mr. Klosterman, a lot faster, and it would be, I think, better given the amount of information and the rest of the hearing. We got a lot to go through today.
We do.
And I understand you're trying to build to some point. I'm with Mr. Bagley here. We've all been through a lot of this before, so we do have some grounding. Perhaps you could get to your point, and that would be the only. Otherwise, I'm in agreement with Mr. Bagley.
Yeah, maybe Mr. Klosterman, you could go to your initial question or your final question, and then if we need more background, we can try and get that rather than build to the background, which you know, we all have been through mine plans and orders and limit consent ad infinitum this year, and so we understand how they work.
Mr. Gibson, did Black Hills Bentonnite make any determination of whether or not their mining plan and its effect on the drainages that we just talked about may impact the ranching operations or the hunting outfitting that is performed on the surface within those areas?
Same question, same objection.
This actually does address one of the 4 points.
Could you repeat your question one more time?
Could you read that back, Kathy?
Mr. Gibson, did Black Hills Bentonnite make any determination of whether or not their mining plan and its effect on the drainage that we just talked about may impact the ranching operations or the hunting outfitting that is performed on the surface within those areas?
So the best I could do to answer that is, and whether or not this answers your question is, when putting this together, I did everything to avoid the drainages and to stay clear of them so that we wouldn't have any effect on them. I mean, that's why I went out with the GPS, was to make sure that we weren't going to affect them or be close to them and to stay away from them. So yes, to that point, like that, you know, as far as the you know, what the drainages themselves, how they affect the 3T ranch, I can't address that specifically. All I can say is when I put this together, I did everything to stay away from them, to not affect them, to avoid them.
So the answer to my question really is you made no such determination as to whether or not the mining operations, as it may affect these drainages that are part of or go through the Herco Amendment area, how that may have affected the surface use operations on the TTT ranch. Drew?
Objection asked and answered.
I think I agree.
With respect to the mine plan, did you specifically identify how long it would take for the mining operations to be conducted?
Like I said earlier, I did not put any specific dates or anything because without surface owner consent, there was no way to gauge when anything would be able to start. All I was able to do to be as close as possible is just put, when we got approval, everything, you know, we would try to start immediately.
Did you make a determination, Mr. Gibson, of how long it would take to complete the operations for the pits that you identified in your mine plan? From start to finish, how long would it take? I don't care about when they're going to start. I just want to know, did you determine how long it would take to complete those mining operations?
Could you repeat that question so I make sure I answer?
Did you make a determination, Mr. Gibson, of how long it would take to complete the operations for the pits that you identified in your mine plan? From start to finish, how long would it take? I don't care about when they're going to start. I just want to know if you can determine how long it would take to complete those mining operations.
There was no final determination because, like I said, there was no way, no start. There's no way to determine the start. So, you know, can we take this map down?
I think you've answered my question. Okay. Because no such determination was made, you would agree that the surface owner could not then evaluate and determine how those operations may affect the surface lands because they don't know how long they're going to be going on. True?
Objection, speculation.
Go ahead and answer the question.
I guess I'm not the best person to answer that stuff.
Fair enough.
When it comes to specifics and the pits and when things get directly open and the next sequence gets going, I'm not the best person to answer that because I don't make those determinations.
In this mine plan, you also indicated that there was going to be storage/stockpile sites. True?
Correct. Usually, you know.
Is that true? Yes or no?
Say your statement one more time.
In your mine plan, was there a provision that indicated that there was going to be storage or stockpile sites on the Herco Amendment area?
Yes.
Or stated within your how stockpiles storage may exist?
Madam Chair, again, this is all stuff, the DEQ, the sufficiency of the mining plan, the details of the mining plan are issues that are addressed by the DEQ when they review the entire application. It's not something that, you know, this council is required to approve.
Where are you going with this, Mr. Costa?
Where I'm going with this is one of the factors that the court or this council needs to consider in determining whether or not to give consent in lieu of is what is the impact that's going to happen on the surface. And in order for that to be determined, we would need to know how long are these operations going to be in effect? How long is the surface these piles going to exist? The surface owner cannot give his consent when you don't have the defined plan. One of the things that is required is that the plan has to be detailed enough to give the surface owner enough information to determine whether or not he or she wants to give his consent.
Madam Chair, I think with having some experience with this, I think what he's trying to get at, we're talking about land use. We're talking about what he's trying to get at is how long is this property going to be out of use for any practical purposes by the landowner? And that's why he's trying to figure out what these dates are. And you're right, the initial date does not matter one bit. You can start it 10 years from now and end it 12 years from now, or you can start it next week and end it 2 years from next week. I think I see your relevancy there. So what we're trying to get at is what effect this actually has on the land. Does that make sense to you? Do you understand kind of where it's going with the questioning now?
Yeah, and at least with the time determinations, like I said, I'm not the best person to answer those questions.
Yeah, Mr. Klosterman, that might be a good question to ask the people who determine the timelines and not the guy who writes the mine plan.
He wrote the plan, and the plan is supposed to put the surface owner on notice of these things so that they can make that determination. I don't understand how an individual who's preparing the plan could not know this information. And if it's simply he doesn't know it, then I think it proves the point that it shows that the surface owner wasn't given a detailed enough plan to make such a determination.
You've made that point.
Again,
You've made it.
So, Madam Chair, this is going to come down to a formula at some point of dollars per day, dollars per week, dollars per month. So in the end, whether it lasts 2 years or 4 years, that should be formulated. So really, you've got to question at some point how relevant that is as well. So maybe leave it up to us in your argument to more likely address what kind of damages are you facing seasonally or annually or daily or weekly. Those are numbers we can get our heads around and understand. But so far what we have is a lot of gray matter and no substance.
What I will say is that our next witness will be Bruce Lawson, who can probably answer a number of these questions.
Okay, that would be helpful because we don't have an infinite amount of time to do this, and we want to give everybody a fair hearing.
If you could just give me a moment, and if I need to pass with this witness and move on to somebody else, but let me just look at my notes to see if there's anything else I wanted to ask Mr. Gibson.
We're going to, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Klosterman, a moment ago you were referring to a passage, I think, in the rules. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Can you just give me the number for that quickly?
Okay. Are you asking for the elements in regards to the order in lieu of consent?
No, I am just, you referenced, and you're pointing sort of to it now. Yeah, but then you were referencing some document that I thought was a prescription in the rule or regs or the statute with regards to the landowner being able to understand the impacts to his land.
Yeah, so
what is the reference document you're using for where that is specified?
Okay, that is in 35-11 406B, and then there's in parentheses B again, and what it says is, quote, that the mining plan and the reclamation plan is detailed
enough
so as to illustrate the proposed surface use, including proposed routes and egress and ingress. That's the provision I was
that's what
referring to. Mr. Gibson, can you tell us, you mentioned earlier that this mine plan and reclamation plan was sent to Mr. Crossingham on June 15th of 2017, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And the mine application is dated November 1st of 2017, correct?
That is correct.
Did Black Hills Bentonnite amend, or did they send in an application to the DEQ in June of 2017?
I'd have to look at that application and look at the cover sheet when I sent it to the DEQ to be exact. There's another thing involved with those Form 111s. Because of the numbers and the acreages, I know that I've had to change them. So let me say this. When Mr. Crossingham got his on June 15th, that's probably when I sent the original application to the DEQ and they got their copy of it. Because I know that I've had to make changes to that Form 1 because of other previous amendments and revisions that have got changed. So I had to adjust the numbers. So that specific one probably came later. When Mr. Crossingham got his copies of the mine plan and rec plan, the DEQ probably got the whole application right around that same time. Now that I think about it, that Form 1, the numbers have been changed. So that came probably after the one that we've been referencing here because the numbers have changed. So I had to change that Form 1 as other things that got approved changed.
If you would turn to the mine plan, which is marked as Petitioner's Exhibit 25, and then do you see at the bottom of each page, it says like MP 1, 2, 3?
Yes.
Okay. If you would look to MP 13. Okay. Are you there?
Yes.
And on page 13, under paragraph 3.7, this is the mining sequence and schedule, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And if you read this schedule, which continues on MP 13, 14, and 15, right? This indicates that these activities, the mine development activities, are going to be performed in the first year, correct?
Yes, I labeled everything the first year so that,
Is that true?
Say it one more time so I can.
In the mine sequencing schedule, are all of the mining activities that are noted on pages 13, 14, and 15 all indicated as being or will be performed in the first year?
It is labeled that.
Okay. And there is no indication that there is going to be mine development in the second year, the third year, the fourth year, or any other year, true?
It doesn't say any other years because I just put everything first year so they could go wherever they wanted year one. That's why that was listed like that.
And you would expect that if a landowner or surface owner is looking at this mining plan by reading pages 13, 14, and 15, they would believe and understand that these activities could be completed in 1 year.
Could you repeat what he just said, please?
You would expect that if a landowner or surface owner is looking at the mining plan by reading pages 13, 14, and 15, they would believe and understand that these activities could be contemplated in or completed in 1 year.
I guess I would reference the first paragraph where it says everything will begin as soon as possible and all attempts will be made to assure that reclamation occurs concurrently with the mining activities. And just everything's set forth so that, I mean, you gotta, I know you're like referring to a specific end date of the 3T10 claim. Not everything in the HERCO amendment has a time limit. So, you know, it just, everything was just made so that they could go where they needed to off the bat. And I don't determine that. I just, put forth so they have the options to operate how they need to.
But you would agree that the purpose of the mine plan, when you give it to the surface owner, is to give them notice of what they could expect of how long these activities would occur. True?
Sure. Sorry.
You would agree that the purpose of the mine plan, when you give it to the surface owner, is to give them notice of what they could expect of how long these activities would occur, true?
Generally, yeah, I would say.
Mr. Klosterman,
That's
can
all
you get
the
to your point, please? Okay, thank you.
That's all the questions I have for Mr. Gibson. Thank you.
Are there any questions from the council?
Just one quick one. If I understand it right, what you're saying is the big question about ingress and egress. To the Herkel Amendment, it's coming from lands that already have ingress and egress, and those are going to join.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
But there is no ingress and egress anywhere else going into the Herkel Amendment. It's going to come from roads that already exist under mining operations that are already underway.
Correct.
And those products that are taken out of the Herkel Amendment will be transported on those existing roads just as they have through the other mining operations. So the only new transport roads that you will have will be in the Herkel Amendment.
Correct.
Everything else is existing and in play, and those easements are in place, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why it's not in the Herkel Amendment.
Yeah, like I showed earlier, we got an already approved permit to the north and to the south. And that one road, which shows here going through here, this is already part of our permit. The only new roads that we're building are ones that break off to the specific locations that we're going to within the Herkel Amendment.
So that road already exists in the Herkel Amendment that connects the two different mines on either side.
Yes, it's already part of our permit.
Dave?
Yeah. Thanks for answering that question. I guess as a comment, when I look at section 2.2 of the mining plan, which is page MP3, you really don't spell that out. So if I'm reading this, I can say it's going to be various previously existing roads. It would be nice to, clearly state this is where it's coming from this way or coming from that way, just so that at least as a council member reading this, I'd be able to feel good that all that stuff is there. I know you know it because you've been on it, you've been there working it, but you read it, maybe a landowner might not know. That's just a suggestion. This kind of bothers me, and so I'm going to ask it again, although I know we've heard some answers on this. So on MP 13, we're talking about mining sequence and schedule. And I guess what I would like to see is anyone, and I'm just going to, and you may not know the answer to this, but has anybody thought about what's going to happen in year 2, what's going to happen in year 3, and everything ends in year 4, or do we go through year 10, or, has anyone kind of thought through that sequence? Because it's not shown.
They have, and I would not be the best person to answer that. Yeah.
Oh, and that's fine.
Come on, Dr. Bagley, weren't you paying attention?
I'm sorry. I wasn't tired of speaking. That just wanted to ask. Thank you.
No. Yeah. This amendment to the permit was public notice?
No.
Okay.
We haven't even got to that point yet.
You haven't got, oh, I see.
This is landowner. Any other questions? Okay.
All right.
Oh, sorry.
Is it, to your knowledge, is there any additional activity planned within the permit area that isn't identified in the document?
You mean, are you asking if there's anything else? Oh, I proposed everything.
Specifically, is there any activity to your knowledge that wasn't identified in the document you provided seeking consent for?
I guess I'm not sure about what you mean by activity. Like, are there other oil and gas going on there or something like that?
No, planned activities of Black Hills.
No, we have no other planned activities. What you see is what we got planned.
Okay, thank you.
I don't think I have any questions right now.
Can we follow up on a question from a member of the panel?
No.
And Madam Chair, I do have a couple of follow-up questions
Right, yeah.
that I think will.
Call redirect. No other questions from the council? Okay. Redirect.
Thank you. Mr. Gibson, will you take a look at page MP1 of the mine plan, paragraph 1.3?
Yes, okay.
And what does that provide?
Life of the mine activities. It says the life of the mine activities operation expected to last approximately 5 years. Now, with that 5 years, I also included, when I think of ending mining, I take in when you get bond release. So that's why I put 5 years, because you can't even apply for bond release until 5 years after an area has been reclaimed or ceded. So that's where that comes from, is, that's when I put that in there, that's what I was taking into consideration.
So, so I'm assuming from that the mining operations will last maybe a couple of years and then some reclamation. What approximate time frame for mining then reclamation?
Yes, I mean, because I know the goal is to get in and get out as soon as possible. So I put the 5 years because that, to me, you're done mining, you have bond release. So, and that's the fastest you can get it, is the 5 years, or when you can.
Okay. I'd like to hand you Exhibit 37. Will you take a look at that, if you would, and tell me what that is?
So this is a grant of easement and right-of-way, and it includes certain access roads within our permit.
Okay, is that for the access road across the Herco Amendment?
One of these is for the access across the Herco Amendment.
And what is the date on that?
The date on this one is September 30th, 1999.
Okay. And is that the time frame? Is that the length of time that that Black Hills has had access across the Herco Amendment?
So you might want to ask someone else that question, because 1999 is before my time, and I got there 2009, so I can't tell you exactly.
Well, the document probably speaks for itself. I'd move to admit Exhibit 37.
I would object to this. This exhibit, as you can see in the second full paragraph, gives a description to what should be attached as Exhibit A. Exhibit A gives the description of the easement. They didn't even include that to show you what portions of the road or access that they were given to. And as I'll demonstrate in cross-examination, that this road agreement does not give egress and ingress to the Herco Amendment area. It's for only within that area. But to say that this is a complete exhibit clearly misstates the fact that you would need to see the legal descriptions to show what road segments were part of this 1999 road easement.
I'll go ahead and admit it, realizing that it's incomplete.
And if I could respond to that, it actually is complete. It's a notice of the actual road agreement. It is an officially recorded document, which typically comes into evidence without any support. In other words, it's self-authenticating.
Yeah.
Now, Mr. Gibson, I suspect that where Mr. Klosterman is going with some of this testimony is that Mr. Crossingham was not provided some of the information. And do you know what this notebook right here is? Yes, do you recognize that?
Yes.
What is that?
That's a complete copy of the HERCO amendment application.
And just so, have you seen this before?
Yes.
Okay. Was Mr. Crossingham, Mr. Klosterman provided a complete copy of this?
Was he provided a complete copy?
Yes.
To my knowledge, yes, because it'd be right there.
Okay. So he has everything that you've submitted to the DEQ?
He does.
That's all I have.
Mr. Gibson, you were asked to look at Petitioner's Exhibit 37.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
This is a document entitled Memorandum of Grant of Easement and Right-of-Way, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Do you know what specific legal descriptions for an easement or right-of-way were given pursuant to this easement?
Could you repeat that question?
Okay. The specific portions or easement that were granted from TTT Ranch to Black Hills Bentonnite, those are actually described in Exhibit A. True?
I'd have to look at Exhibit A to know exactly what it shows. I don't know what it shows off the top of my head.
Right. And so neither does the Environmental Quality Council. They don't know what Exhibit A shows to show the specific segments of road that an easement was given from the TT Ranch to Black Hills Bentonnite. True?
All I can reference is what I see right in front of me.
Okay. And if there are segments within each of those township ranges that are identified on the first page of this exhibit, you would need to look at Exhibit A to see what specifically and how long those segments were. True?
Well, like it says here, you know, it gives the width of the road and it shows it on Exhibit A. I mean, that's what it does say on the sheet.
Yeah, and you would have to look at that exhibit to know specifically what the description was for that road easement. True?
Mr. Klosterman?
Yeah.
I think we beat this to death.
Well, I want to clarify for the record, because Mr. Council Member Mr. Flitner asked the question, and your testimony was that you're telling the EQC that Black Hills Bentonnite has a road agreement or easement that allows them to take this road, which is called what?
We refer to it as IBR number 7, Incidental Boundary Revision number 7.
Okay, but this road that we're referencing that comes from the north into the HERCO amendment, what's the name of that road?
This road is called,
This is the Wall Creek Road, correct?
I just refer to this stuff as like road segments on the map. That's how it's shown on the map. So as far as calling that the Wall Creek Road.
Whatever, what's the point?
The point is, going north out of this Herco Amendment area, Black Hills Bentonnite does not have a road agreement or right-of-way to use the Wall Creek to access the Herco Amendment area. True?
I don't know if I'd be the right person to answer that question. All I can say is this is our permit area. This is our current access road through the permit area coming to here and continuing on.
And as this road continues north, you have no idea whether or not Black Hills Bentonnite has.
Mr. Klosterman, unless you have an exhibit that shows that, all we can go by is this exhibit.
Okay. Well, I do have an exhibit, and it is exhibit.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'd suggest that this witness has told us all he knows. And
we
we can let other witnesses perhaps answer this. I know what I need to know right now, which is that this exhibit doesn't really know what goes on beyond that map edge. And okay, I know that. Move on.
Yeah, is there anything else that you have that he does know, as opposed to pointing out what he doesn't know, which we understand?
Okay. I have no further questions.
Excuse.
Yeah.
Just leave the exhibit.
Just leave them.
Mr. Ditto?
We'll call Mr. Bruce Lawson.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Mr. Lawson, will you state your name
Bruce Anthony Lawson.
and how are you employed?
I've been employed by Black Hills Bentonnite for 33 years, and I'm the Mine Development Reclamation Manager.
Will you repeat that again?
Yes, my title is Mine Development and Reclamation Manager
Okay.
for Black Hills Bentonnite.
What are your duties in that position?
Everything. Essentially, I'm responsible for initiating the development of new mining operations, amendments. I deal with the landowners in negotiating surface agreements. I deal with mineral owners in negotiating mineral agreements. I'm responsible for most all of the dealings with the regulatory agencies, primarily BLM and Department of Environmental Quality. I do a lot of the baseline environmental surveys on the operations. I coordinate all of the environmental consultants that we hire to provide inventories for our permit applications. I also do a great deal of engineering and surveying and mapping and AutoCAD work. Develop most of the maps. I calculate all of the reclamation liabilities for all of our mining operations. We have approximately 7 permitted large-scale mining operations in about 6 counties across Wyoming. I'm also responsible to a large degree for the regulatory compliance involved with the land quality issues. I don't deal much with air quality or water quality issues to some degree. Again, I'm not a mining engineer. I have a bachelor's science degree from the University of Wyoming in rangeland ecology and watershed management, and an associate's degree from Casper College in agriculture. So I've got a very, very knowledgeable base in land use issues, wildlife, ranching operations, livestock. I also and am in charge of all of our reclamation activities from not only the planning phase, but purchasing all of our reclamation equipment, actually conducting those reclamation activities to some extent, getting out running a John Deere tractor, planting the grass, and then a lot of extensive work following up in conducting the post-mining reclamation assessments to prove to DEQ and primarily BLM that we have met or exceeded our revegetation requirements under our reclamation plans, and also do extensive work in terms of calculating our reclamation bonds and our volumes.
Okay.
And also to some extent, you know, I not to some extent, but I do a great deal of the actual mine plan development. Doug Gibson, I'm his supervisor. He answers to me.
Okay. Do you know how long Black Hills has been mining on the Triple T Ranch?
Yes, Mr. Klosterman can probably correct me, but I believe Mr. Crossingham bought the 3T Ranch in 1986, but Black Hills Bentonnite has been conducting mining activities within the current boundary of the 3T Ranch since 1975, and prior to 1975, Mr. Thorson did quite a bit of work in the area, and I think evaluating federal minerals within the boundaries of the ranch.
How long have you, do you know Mr. Crossingham?
Yes, I do.
How long have you known him?
I think I met Mr. Crossingham shortly after he purchased the ranch. I went to the main ranch house to visit with him in person one day, I think probably concerning one of our mining issues, and his late wife directed me to Mr. Crossingham, who was actually out operating a Caterpillar 627 scraper and constructing a reservoir, stock reservoir. And that's the first time I met him. We had a great conversation and had a nice visit.
Has your relationship been amiable with Mr. Crossingham?
For the most part,
okay.
I would say.
Do you have any idea how much land the Triple T Ranch includes?
Yes, as a result of this hearing, I took it upon myself to estimate the actual boundaries of the ranch. After 33 years of working extensively in the Casey area, specifically on permit 240C, I've gained an intimate knowledge of the adjacent neighboring ranches and where the fence lines and borders are, and I was actually able through the use of AutoCAD and digital aerial photography to identify what I believe are most of the boundaries of the ranch in terms of not only fence line, but topographic features such as cliffs and various things. So I estimated that the ranch boundary, which includes any numbers of lands deeded, state, federal. There are some convenience fence situations where the ranch boundary fences may be on a adjacent landowner. But anyhow, I estimated the ranch holding boundary to be approximately 63,000 acres. And I think at one point in time, Mr. Crossingham's ranch foreman had indicated to me in a personal conversation with him that he threw out a number that maybe the ranch boundary was in the 60 to 65,000 acre range.
And how much, we've already heard, I guess, the area that is impacted by the HERCO amendment. Do you recall that number? How many acres?
30 to 40, I believe.
That will actually be impacted. The HERCO amendment itself includes how many acres?
300 and, I can't recall what Doug said this morning, but
okay,
approximately 340 acres, something like that.
Okay.
Have you had a chance when you've been out on the Triple T Ranch to observe the surface operations?
Absolutely. Like I say, I've been working for Black Hills Bentonnite for 33 years. I spend a great deal of time in the field. I'm a Casper native. I'm a big game hunter. I'm a wildlife enthusiast. I have experience in ranching operations. So those things are of personal interest to me, and I go out of my way to observe those things. So
I'm gonna try to, I'll ask you to shorten your answers a little so we can just get right to the testimony here. I don't want to spend a lot of time.
So repeat the question, please.
Elaborating, but have you had a chance to observe surface operations of the Triple T Ranch?
Absolutely.
And what is it that the TT Ranch does?
3T Ranch, from my observations, is strictly a cattle operation, cow-calf operation. I have never seen any livestock other than cattle on the ranch. And in addition to that, my knowledge through discussions with the ranch foreman is that they also conduct big game hunting. They lease the ranch to an outfitter for big game hunting activities.
In the years that you've been out there, have you seen hunters?
You're speaking to the Herco vicinity.
Yeah.
No.
In the general area around the Herco.
No, it's not very conducive for big game hunting.
And why is that?
The topography and geology of that area that we have historically mined is a very rugged, steep topography with extremely barren lands. Most of the lands we've mined on 3T and adjacent to Herco is extremely barren bentonite outcrops, shale outcrops that are abutted by extremely steep, highly erosive buttes that offer no vegetation or hiding cover for wildlife, particularly big game.
Over the years, has Mr. Crossingham or his ranch foreman complained to you about interference with their surface operation?
No.
Has he complained to you about interference with water or ponds, anything like that?
No, they haven't. We've made some improvements to their water facilities.
And how's that?
We have entered into agreement with Mr. Crossingham to maintain what he refers to as several silt dams, which he constructed above a huge reservoir that he built, which supplies water to his irrigators and his hayfields on his ranch. The silt dams he constructed above that were constructed by Mr. Crossingham to specifically capture any silt and sediment coming down Posey Creek, which these reservoirs are constructed on. And over the years, we have probably committed several $100,000 in terms of heavy equipment that we've provided to maintain those dams for Mr. Crossingham.
I guess. Yeah.
What does this have to do with the Herco?
Actually, that's why I was interrupting us, because this is not on the Herco Amendment.
There is a reservoir on the Herco Amendment that when we developed the road across the easement and right away that runs through the Herco Amendment that Mr. Crossingham granted to Black Hills Bentonnite, there was a reservoir that was non-functional that our road actually crossed the existing dike of that reservoir. That reservoir had failed, and I was able, in the placement of very large, I believe a 60-inch culvert, place that culvert in such a manner that it restored the function of that reservoir, and that reservoir now is a very well developed source of water for wildlife and livestock in that area.
Okay. Let's talk, if we can, a little bit about the reclamation. This statute requires that the plan that we provide to Mr. Crossingham reclaims the surface to its approved future use in segments if circumstances permit as soon as reasonably possible. Is that something that you can address?
Yes, I can. The lands within the HERCO amendment are somewhat a little better quality land than what we typically mine in the area. Most of the mining we've done has been strictly on Bentonnite shale outcrops. This area is a little better vegetated. There's actually topsoil resources there that will allow us to, once the topsoil is salvaged, to reclaim those lands back to the post-mining, stated post-mining land use in the reclamation plan, which is livestock grazing and wildlife habitat.
Does he need to slow down at all? Are you good? Okay.
Oh.
Can you describe the mining process and how the reclamation, describe for me if you would. Let's just go to the reclamation process. How and when does that start?
According to the land quality regulations, essentially they consider backfilling of an open pit to be the initiation of reclamation. Typically what Black Hills does is we mine in an open cut, shallow open cut, multiple cut direct backfill sequence. So we will remove the topsoil from the first development area, which could include the pit and an overburdened stockpile area. So with topsoil salvage stockpile in those areas, once that's done, we proceed into removing the overburden, which overlies the bentonite. That's removed and actually placed on a designated overburden stockpile area. Once the overburden is removed, we go into a special mining handling technique that's unique to bentonite mining, and that is we employ a practice of once the bentonite's removed, that typically occurs during the winter months. We don't remove any bentonite during the winter time because we've employed a practice historically at Black Hills Bentonite where we actually sun dry the bentonite that we've exposed. And that's a practice where we use very large John Deere tractors with typical tillage and implement. So in the warmer summer months, we literally go in those exposed pits where the bentonite's exposed, and we farm the bentonite. We plow it, we sun dry it. As a layer becomes dry, we go in with a scraper and we pick up that dried layer of bentonite and we transport it to a bentonite stockpile location. And, excuse me, I think this is some important information because it's such a unique practice for our industry. The other thing that we've employed at Black Hills Bentonite to lessen the impact to the surface owners, we want to reduce our physical footprint on these landowners' lands. So what we do, instead of disturbing an additional area for the bentonite stockpile, we use the overburden stockpile as the bentonite stockpile area. So we place the bentonite removed from the pit on top of the overburden stockpile. So we considerably lessen our footprint of disturbance and impact to the surface owner. And
so is this description more or less included in the mine plan that was?
It is in great detail.
Okay. And then let's talk about reclamation.
Okay.
If you would describe when it starts and how it's done.
Again,
yeah. I guess you got the first part of that. You talked about the overburden and filling the past digs is the beginning of the reclamation process. Is that
Correct.
right? And then if you continue from there.
Sure. In some instances, in the case of our mine plan on the HERCO amendment, some of those pits you'll see illustrated are a single cut. So it won't be a multiple cut situation where you've got more than one advancing pit series. But typically on HERCO, we've got some standalone pits where we'll go in and remove the overburden, create a bentonite stockpile area on top of the overburden. And then once the bentonite is hauled back to the plants in Casper, then the area is eligible for complete reclamation. So in that case, we would backfill the overburden that was placed in an out-of-pit stockpile. That would backfill into the open pit. The area would be graded and contoured to blend with approximate original contours, which is detailed in the rec plan, and then topsoiled and seeded with a permanent seed mixture to support the post-mining land uses.
Okay. Is the on this requirement number B that the mining plan and the reclamation plan is detailed so as to illustrate the full proposed surface use, including proposed routes of egress and egress? Let's talk about that. And Mr. Doug has been through most of the mining and reclamation plan. You've added to that. Can you talk a little bit about access, access to the HERCO amendment?
Yes, I can, as a matter of fact. I think we have a section in the mine and reclamation plan that provides a fairly detailed description of how we will access the HERCO amendment area from Interstate 25. So that describes where we come off I-25 and utilize historic roads, particularly what's called the Wall Creek Road or the Tisdale Mountain Oil Field Road. And we've been utilizing that road for since the early 1970s and never been restricted from the use of that road by the 3T Ranch.
How about north of the HERCO amendment? I believe you, I don't know if you saw Exhibit 37. Will you take a look at Exhibit 37? And is that, what is the nature of that agreement?
Actually, this was an agreement that I had some involvement with at the time. I believe that this agreement was drawn up by Mr. Crossingham's longtime attorney for the 3T Ranch, Don Chapin. But we had several road segments within the boundaries of the 3T Ranch. That
let me move this along a little bit.
Okay.
Does this provide for a road easement across the HERCO amendment?
Yes, directly, right through the middle of the HERCO amendment.
Okay. And specifically, what part of the legal description is that? If you look on Exhibit 37, what section are we in there?
Well, let me look at the map here. That's section 11.
Okay. And does that provide for access across the east half of section 11?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Now going north, so that is at least for the HERCO amendment, and then further north there, what is the? We heard Mr. Gibson's testimony. What's your understanding of north of the HERCO amendment?
North of the HERCO amendment, which is not shown on the map, are extensive areas of approved permit areas. permit 248C.
Excuse me. You speak up a little louder, Mr. Lawson.
Oh, sure.
And you can sit down too, so you're speaking into the mic.
So yes, going north from the Herco Amendment, there are substantial amounts of land that currently are within permit to mine 248C, and I believe an additional amendment area that was approved a number of years ago adjacent. And within those lands, the road running north of Herco, and Mr. Thorson could speak to this more accurately than I can. There are a number of leases that Mr. Thorson acquired from private minerals owners, and I believe they're also private landowners on those permitted lands. So there's very, very extensive amounts of lands within the mining permit that have approved mine plans. The roads have been approved under those mine plans proceeding north.
Have in all the years that you've Black Hills has been mining there, has Mr. Crossingham or anyone told you that you didn't have the right of access?
No.
To the Herco Amendment?
No.
Or any other place where you mine?
Not to my knowledge.
When's the first time that you heard this objection that Black Hills does not have access along the Wall Creek Road? When's the first time you heard that?
I probably would be when these negotiations started between Mr. Thorson and Mr. Crossingham concerning the development of the Herco Amendment area.
Okay. Has the Triple T Ranch ever complained about an injured cow or an injured calf or anything of that nature?
I don't believe they have with regards to Black Hills Bentonnite, but perhaps some of the contractors that haul Bentonnite that aren't employees of Black Hills Bentonnite, they may have. I mean, I occasionally see a dead cow along the county road, but who knows? Don't really know for sure who hit it.
But at least you're not aware of any complaints to Black Hills, is that right?
No, I'm not.
Let me take just a minute here and glance at my notes. Let me ask this, since you're involved in the mine development and reclamation, how long do you expect that Black Hills will be using the Herco Amendment area?
I think that has been detailed in the reclamation plan in terms of the schedule. I believe that given the fleet of heavy equipment that our company owns, it would be no problem at all for us to actually go in and mine all of that proposed mining, I think, within the same year and meet the deadline of 2020.
So let's talk for just a minute about the different mineral rights on this property, if you would. Can you show the council where the Herco deed, which piece of the Herco Amendment involves Herco minerals?
So again, just to reiterate, the cyan blue line indicates the boundary of the proposed Herco Amendment. This portion here would involve or contain the private minerals that we obtained from HERCO. This portion of the proposed amendment area is the 3T claim. And this portion.
And when you say the 3T claim, we're talking about the TTT10?
Yes.
And what is that?
I believe that's a claim that Black Hills Bentonnite has acquired the rights to mine from.
Okay, so it's a mining claim?
Yes.
Okay. And then the last piece down there?
Last piece down here is another mining claim called Docket number 10, and it's a claim that's split estate. It's federal minerals and private surface under Stock Grazing Homestead Act lands.
Okay, and how about the TT10? Who owns the minerals on TTT10?
I believe Black Hills Bentonnite has leased those minerals from Mr. Crossingham.
Are those federal minerals as well?
Yes.
Okay. Can you speak to the documents that relate to those? Does Black Hills have the right to mine the HERCO minerals?
Yes, absolutely. To the best of my knowledge, the minerals on HERCO was private minerals owned by a party, HERCO. I think there was another party name associated with that. I can't recall. The surface, to the best of my knowledge, is private surface. Black Hills Bentonnite acquired the rights, purchased the minerals from the HERCO minerals.
And we'll go ahead and submit Exhibit 35. I believe we've stipulated to the admissibility of 35. And on the triple T10, do you know, can you explain for the council briefly how the federal minerals, how the right to mine federal minerals is obtained?
I'm going to object on foundation, also relevancy.
The question? I'll go ahead and allow the question for right now. Don't go too far afield though.
What gives someone the right to mine federal minerals on that TTT10?
That would be through a process of locating a placer mining claim, and Bentonnite, unlike gold or silver, is classified as a placer mineral, and you can just go through a process through the Bureau of Land Management of physically locating a claim by staking it, and staking would involve constructing monuments on the corners of the claim, and also providing location notices on those, which is a written document, an affidavit, which describes the legal description of the mining claim, as well as who the locators and claimants are, and legal description and the date that the claim was located. There's also a requirement for proving discovery of the minerals on the claim. Then once you've completed that staking, and that can occur on federal minerals where the surface is also federally owned. There's a different process where the lands are considered split estate, where the surface is private, the minerals are federal. There's a more complicated process that you go through to locate a claim.
Has, and so who has the right to mine that at this point?
The 3T10 claim?
Yes.
I believe that claim was leased to Black Hills Bentonnite from Mr. Crossingham. So it's my understanding that under the lease agreement that Black Hills Bentonnite has the right to mine that.
Okay. And do you know who went out and staked that claim?
I don't.
And then moving on down to the Bobcat 10 claim. Is it your understanding that Black Hills has the right to mine within that Bobcat 10 claim?
Yes, Black Hills Bentonnite has a lease agreement to mine that claim as well.
And we've also stipulated to the admissibility of Exhibit 31. I believe that's it. And I don't know if that's already up there. Maybe that, I guess it's already up there.
31?
Right. I think it's there, isn't it?
No, I don't. Let's see. Got 37, 27, 35.
Oh, here we go. 31, I'm going to stipulate for the admissibility of that. And that exhibit. Can you take one moment? I think I'm about finished with Mr. Lawson. That's all I have right now, Mr. Lawson.
Thank you.
Mr. Klosterman, how long do you think your cross will take?
If we're looking at a lunch break around 12, I know it's going to take me more than 15 minutes.
Well, is it going to take you half an hour? Is it going to take you an hour? Do you have any idea?
I would say, maybe a half hour.
Okay, why don't we take a 5-minute break for personal needs, and then we'll come back and do that, and then we'll have lunch.
You got this drug.
Mrs. Klosterman?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good morning.
Good morning.
Wanted to follow up on some of the testimony that you gave on direct examination. You testified that Black Hills Bentonnite has been mining on the surface that would be included within the TTT ranch since 1975, correct?
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
Okay. And how many amendments have been made to the original permit since Black Hills Bentonnite has been mining on the TTT ranch surface?
Since it was acquired by Mr. Crossingham?
Yeah, so let's say since 1986 to the present date, how many amendments has Black Hills Bentonnite sought to obtain for additional mining on the TTT ranch surface?
I would have to say one amendment area and perhaps
Miss,
2 or 3.
Mr. Lawson, could you speak up, please?
Oh, yes. I would have to say, without looking at any documents, I would have to say, but to the best of my recollection, we have done one amendment area and perhaps 2 incidental boundary revisions.
So has Black Hills Bentonnite been continuously mining bentonite out at the TTT ranch since 1975?
I can't answer that because I did not start working for Black Hills Bentonnite until 1985.
Okay. How about from 1985 to the current date? Has Black Hills Bentonnite been continuously mining out on the TTT ranch?
To the best of my knowledge.
Since 1975, or since 1985, when you began, how many reclamation bonds have been released for mines that Black Hills Bentonnite has on the TTT ranch?
We have never had a reclamation bond released.
And you've never completed the reclamation of any mines out at the TTT ranch, true?
Yes, but I need to qualify your question concerning the reclamation bond release. We have had specific reductions in our reclamation bond on successful reclamation on several different reclamation projects. But the Department of Environmental Quality does not allow an overall release of the reclamation bond. So we do get reductions, or what we call final bond release, on successful reclamation once we've proved to the Land Quality Division that we have met the reclamation standards presented in our approved reclamation plans. So what they will do is they will essentially no longer hold us to a reclamation dollar amount for those specific lands where we have met the requirements for successful establishment of vegetation according to the approved reclamation plan. So we have several of those on the 3T Ranch where we've been successful.
How many current mine pits are open on the 3T Ranch currently outside of the HERCO amendment area?
I think we're getting strayed from the HERCO amendment.
I'll let you go, but don't go very far. I'm not gonna let this go very far.
You can answer, sir.
Yes, that's a complicated question. I guess my memory's not, but without looking at my current annual mining report or a mine plan map of what we have, where we're currently operating within the boundaries of 3T Ranch, I can't answer that question.
Would you agree with this, that there are multiple mine site locations that Black Hills Bentonnite has on the 3T Ranch that from the start of mining operations to the current date without reclamation are in excess of 10 years?
Some,
How many?
without looking at my mining report or a mine map, I can't honestly, accurately answer your question.
Mr. Klosterman, why don't we focus on the Herco amendment? I think we get what you're trying to say.
One of the things that you testified to on direct examination was you were asked, how long do you expect to use the Herco amendment area? And your testimony is that you believe that you could complete mining operations within the same year, correct?
Yes.
So it will take 1 year to complete the all mining operations within the Herco amendment area, true?
What we have currently proposed, yes.
Okay. And similar question with respect to if you complete the mining operations within the Herco amendment area within 1 year, how long is the proposed reclamation of those areas within the Herco amendment?
That would be somewhat dependent upon the removal of the bentonite that we had stockpiled on top of the overburden stockpiles to reduce our impact to the surface owner.
Well, you talk about reducing the impact of the surface owner, but isn't it true that Black Hills Bentonite, if they went out and they mined and obtained the bentonite from these mines, that they could put it into a haul truck and take it to its facility in Casper, right?
Not necessarily.
You don't have to stockpile it on the landowner's property, do you?
We do.
You do it, but you don't have to.
We do have to do it.
Well, you've told us that you do this drying process, right?
Correct.
Essentially sun or allow it to be exposed to the air to dry, correct?
Correct.
All right. And is that before or after it's actually mined out of the ground, this drying process?
It's actually a concurrent process. So as we're removing the dried layer from the pit, we're placing it on the stockpile area, and we continue to farm it and dry it on the stockpile that we're constructing.
So are you telling us that when you farm this bentonite, that you cannot take that bentonite, put it into a haul truck, and take it to your facility in Casper? Is that your testimony?
We cannot do that.
Why not?
Our plants aren't designed to handle wet bentonite. So the bentonite that we mine probably runs about 30 to 40% moisture. And the reason that we sun dry the bentonite is that, for one thing, if we didn't dry the bentonite, if we tried to load that in haul trucks in the wintertime, it would freeze in the trucks, the belly dumps, and they wouldn't be able to unload at the Casper plant. And then our plants in Casper are not designed to process wet bentonite. We also don't have adequate stockpile storage area in the plants in Casper sometimes to handle the volume of bentonite.
So Black Hills Bentonite has made the economic decision that they don't want to buy their own land to stockpile their bentonite. Rather, they're just going to put it onto the surface owner's land and keep it there until such time that there's an available market when they think it's most economical. Isn't that the truth?
That has been approved by the Land Quality Division through the approved mine and reclamation plans.
My question is Black Hills Bentonite can take this bentonite to its own location if it wanted to, or if it decided to do that, but elects not to.
We don't have room.
Right. You've made the economic decision not to buy the room where you could put and stockpile this bentonite. Rather, you want to store it and keep it out on the landowner's surface, which then takes additional time used and actual amount of traffic that's going in and out of these locations. True?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Could you read it back, please?
Mr. Klosterman?
Yeah.
Are you going somewhere with this?
Yes, this is going to element regarding whether or not the proposed plan reclaims the surface to its approved future use in segments if circumstances permit as soon as feasibly possible.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Basically, what he's saying is you're doing this for your own economic reasons, pretty much flat out. I think we all understand. Right? And that's why you're not moving the bit. You already explained all that. Well, not feasible economic.
Essentially, to some degree, because of the bentonite drying process that we employ, we have to maintain somewhat of a 6-month inventory in the field, because it takes us, before we can actually process the bentonite that we've mined 1 year, it essentially takes a year to dry that bentonite so that we can process it. So, the drying process not only is an economical, it saves money in hauling costs, saves money in fuel costs, but it also reduces greenhouse emissions. We don't have to. It's an environmental aspect, positive environmental aspect as well, because we don't have to burn as much coal to dry that bentonite. We're using solar radiation to dry it. So
this drying process that you just testified to, sir, in the mining plan, you say that process takes, I believe you start the drying process in July and it goes through September of each year, right?
Correct.
That's what you put in the mining plan.
Correct.
You didn't say that it takes over a year to dry the bentonite, do you?
Apparently, if that's what it says, no. The process of drying and having the ability to transport it to the plant in order to feed it through the plant takes approximately that period of time. Because our plants aren't designed to handle wet bentonite.
But the drying process takes essentially 3 months, July, August, and September.
If it's a warm year, sometimes we dry into early October as well.
Okay. But it certainly doesn't take a year. True.
The actual physical process of drying the bentonite does not take a year.
Okay. Did you have any input in creating the mine and reclamation plan for the Herco Amendment?
Yes, I did.
And what was your involvement versus what was Mr. Gibson's involvement?
The detailed mine and reclamation plan was a document that I wrote. Doug was involved extensively in actually preparing the application, all the appendices. Tom Thorson worked very closely with Doug to develop the actual footprint mining sequence. Again, I'm Doug's supervisor, but the extremely detailed, concise mine plan, reclamation plan was something that I wrote. Doug added to that the descriptions of the actual pits, their dimensions, their locations, the mining sequence. But I was essentially the author of the detail of the mine and reclamation plan.
Why did Todd Druce sign the application?
Probably because either Mr. Thorson or Mr. Madsen were not in the office the day that Doug presented that to Mr. Druce for signature.
Has Black Hills Bentonnite estimated the quantity or tons of bentonite that they expect to mine from the Herco Amendment area?
Mr. Thorson would be able to address that.
You don't know?
Not off the top of my head without looking at additional documents.
And you testified earlier that with respect to hauling of bentonite from these mine pits, is that done by third-party contractors?
Yes, it is.
Okay, it's not done by Black Hills.
That's correct.
Do you have monitoring agreements with your third-party contractors?
I'm sorry, Madam Chairman, I'm not sure where this is going.
Is this going to one of the four elements?
Well, it is, and it's going to go to with respect to impacts upon the surface.
We'll